I call myself a social worker
Yeah.
because that's the thing I've been doing throughout the time of throughout my adult time. I've lived mostly in Uganda, but I've also lived in Norway. I've worked in Sweden and in Russia. I briefly worked in Tanzania and in Kenya. I've also had some projects. I've worked in South Africa.
In your time spent in Uganda, have you followed the AIDS epidemic?
Yes, actually, that was the first thing I ever worked with. Right from the time I was in my third year in secondary school. I was barely 15 or 16. I was already working a lot in the HIV AIDS field.
Yeah.
Even when I went abroad, I went entirely to work in the same line to help young people understand a lot about HIV AIDS, the impact it has on Africa, on Uganda in particular, and to my surprise, for the Norwegians, they didn't have any single idea about HIV AIDS. It's not anything they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, to them it's a disease for the poor.
Right.
Yeah, but I've worked a lot with HIV/AIDS, and then together with tuberculosis, because the two subjects go together now. They are married into one. You can't be handling HIV/AIDS and leaving tuberculosis alone, and you can't have a tuberculosis without considering HIV/AIDS. So I've been working with the two subjects until today. It's the same thing that I've been doing in Russia, in Tanzania, and in South Africa.
What convinced you that the marriage between TB and HIV was based on science and not politics?
Well, I
Considering
haven't.
that
Yes,
TB
yes.
has been around for hundreds of years.
I mean, I haven't actually thought about it. I haven't thought about how it can be a political factor. Reason being, I hardly think in terms of politics. I know it plays a very influential role in every small thing. Politics kind of covers up everything, however small or big they are.
Yeah.
But according to a few studies I have read about, they say that most of the deaths in HIV patients or in TB patients, there's a correlation between the deaths. You find that more than half of the HIV patients who die, they die as a result of contracting tuberculosis. We know that politics is playing a very big factor in the science bit of our society. I remember one time I was shooting a movie about TB, and I went to meet the TB country program director.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, oh, we know you people, you come from abroad, you send a very different picture out there about what is happening here, you see everybody is calm. He had a lot of things he was talking about, kind of blaming the media for portraying the country in a different way. So he never gave me the opportunity to ask him any questions whatsoever, but I kept on wondering, what did he mean portraying the country in a different way? I mean, in the previous year or two, they had been accused of mismanaging the funds that were supposed to be for HIV/AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. So this is why we are saying that politics is playing a very big role in trying to, the kind of influence the scientific world here. Seriously, look at a country like Uganda that has got the biggest part of the country is extremely fertile. How dare we have people dying of hunger? The government must be accountable for that. The last time there was drought and famine in the eastern part of the country, the ministry bought food for the people, and They brought them rotten food. Rotten food. How do people feed on that? There's lack of... not until we develop a culture where we can realize we can feel ashamed. We will not be able to tell when we are right or wrong, when we do the right things. We won't be able. It's simply because we don't have a culture of shame. We don't feel ashamed. Why can someone stand down and leave way for investigations to take place if they really know they're innocent? How can someone be accused and there is evidence brought forward and still the person is defended by the government and kept into the system? No, this kind of things. Why this nonsense of shame? There's no humanity. They only live a life for themselves. They don't live a life for others. They are not here. Politics is looked at as a means of income, not a means of production. That is what every politician sees. I mean, try to speak out what is in my mind about this. For the Norwegians, for the Swedish, it's just nothing like AIDS that is, that's a threat to them. For the last 7-8 years, they haven't registered a single death from HIV AIDS. How unique is that place? I think there's a lot of things that have been hidden from, especially we the blind ones. We do not know much. We don't know probably a lot about the situation. All we know is what we have been told by those who think they know. A white man in Africa is a semi-god. You come and say something, nobody will doubt you, because we know we know you're next to God. That is the perception that people do have here. We do not believe in each other.
But are you saying that you've also been victim of that?
Yeah, perhaps yes. I still have a different attitude towards HIV/AIDS, an attitude that I've had for these years. I know it will keep on changing with time the more I get to know. But still, the fact remains, yes, I'm a victim of this kind of teaching. Yeah, I am. Religion plays its role. The politicians will play their role. The scientists will play their role. And they kind of mix you up. They change your way of understanding. They change everybody's ways of understanding. It takes a lot to get to a level where you need to open up your eyes, but it's a long journey to get to that point where you open up your eyes and get to understand the full picture of what is happening behind the curtains.
I'm concerned with the sexual behavior of Norwegians.
Yes, I just wanted to mention about the sexual behavior of
They are
Norwegians.
actually abstaining or using condoms.
No, there's no use of condom, there's no abstinence. I went to a class, I was lecturing at a vocational institute. Their head teacher was 52 years old. She had never used or touched a condom in her life. The entire class had never touched or used a condom in their life. In hospitals, they have a lot of cases they register every year. Cases of chlamydia. Chlamydia has the same mode of transmission as we have been taught HIV/AIDS is. Same. But looking at how many cases they're registering of chlamydia, that is the same mode of transmission, just as HIV/AIDS. HIV/AIDS is not talked about. If you look at Russia, the northern border of Russia, they share a common border actually with Norway. There are a lot, hundreds and hundreds of prostitutes. There's a lot of HIV/AIDS in Russia, stinking HIV/AIDS.
Close to the border.
Close to the border. I mean, the whole Russia as a federation. The cases of HIV there are untouchable. It's just too much. The borders are porous. Norwegians have sex like, I don't know. They do have lots and lots of sex. They travel a lot. They travel a lot. They travel out to have fun. They will have sex. They drink a lot. They will have sex. You see, But you will never hear of instances of HIV/AIDS amongst them. I don't know. Should we say it's a coincidence? It's luck.
The mainstream activists would probably insist that the prevalence in those countries, or in Norway as opposed to Russia, is already low. Therefore, there's nothing to transmit, or the risk of something.
That is
something being
understandable,
infected.
Richie. Yeah, that's understandable. But we are talking. Your statement would imply within the common borders. But look at more than 3/4 of the country travels abroad twice a year on holiday. At least 3/4 of the entire nation, they travel abroad every year on holidays. Others travel twice or thrice. Others travel once every summer. More than 3/4. More than half of the entire Norwegian population has been to Malaysia, to Thailand, to India, to Bangladesh. At least it has been to Asia.
Yeah. And we're supposed to think that every time everyone has gone to any of those countries ever has always used a condom whenever they've had sex with a local person.
I would highly doubt that. It's not a culture they have.
That's what we're supposed to believe.
Well, that is probably what people will believe, but I highly doubt that. Charity is everywhere and it always begins at home. They don't use them home. I doubt if they're going to use them outside. The women outside are much more attractive than the women in Norway. However ugly they are, they will still be more attractive. Yes. Even if it means it's prostitution, they're cheap to pay. Norwegians are extremely rich. Extremely rich. They can afford to pay.
Government reports that in 0 incidents of AIDS
Yes.
for several years.
Yes.
So then,
I just attended one in December, on 13th of December. Yeah. Where it had been reported there has been 0 incidents of HIV/AIDS for the last 7 years.
And who's celebrating?
Sorry?
Who is celebrating?
Who is celebrating? They don't care. It's not a threat in their life. They have no idea about HIV/AIDS. It's not something we know here. Like a kid in 1st, 2nd grade already knows about HIV/AIDS. They don't know. It's not a threat to them. They only hear about it, and I guess what they know is a disease for the poor.
As a social worker, do you feel that they need to know,
Yes, they need to know.
even though they're not at risk?
Exactly. I have a feeling they need to know because of of what HIV/AIDS has done to the people here. You know, and also the way I have been meant to understand about HIV/AIDS. See, I've been told it's a bad disease, you will die, no cure, no blah blah.
Have you ever practiced unsafe sex?
Yes, I have. I have done so. Not once, many times. So I've done that.
And you're still here.
You know? Yeah, I mean, there are always risks everywhere. Well, I still think the bottom line is we do not know the actual truth. That's why people will just have the precautions and anything. Yeah, I mean, they don't want to take a risk somehow, but the fact remains we do not know the actual truth. I have the figures. The biggest percentage of HIV victims are married people. They are the biggest percentage.
How can we determine that?
That is what the government says, according to statistics done. It includes people who have gone testing, people who are getting treatment. Yes, that is the way they kind of put it together. The prostitutes come third after students. Can you imagine that?
Does it not call into question the test? These figures, these reports?
Yeah. They are questionable, definitely they are. There's no doubt about that. They're very, very questionable.
How can people reading those reports continue to believe that AIDS is contracted by anything sexually transmitted? It goes against logic completely.
Yeah, I mean, it would actually give quite a different picture it would give a different picture. But you know that, above all, we've been kind of brainwashed. We've been made to view the world in this way. We've been made to understand this is like that. And unfortunately, it's the same thing we are passing on from generation to generation. It's the same thing I'm going to give my kids. My kids are going to give to their kids, unless that cycle is broken. But there is not a cycle that is easy to break. If the rulers of the world are not giving us an opportunity to share a table with them, we can't break the cycle. As I said, we've been made to understand that way. And then the governments themselves, it's a political factor. It's about the money. Sometimes it's about the money. They will know that this and this. Yes, I have a perfect example. There's this mosquito spray thing called DDT. Is it DDT? Yes, I think so.
I think they call it something else now. I think they've renamed the chemical, but
They've renamed the chemical.
I'm not sure.
There was a study that had been conducted that it was very unhealthy to spray it indoors because it takes way a lot of time to get out of the house. And they sent a recommendation to the government not to spray what? Not to use DDT in people's houses.
Right.
And what happens? They used it. And where did they use it from first? In the north, where people have no choice. Scientifically, it had been proven that it was a very dangerous chemical to use. But the government went ahead and used it in people's houses. So we don't know at the end of the day how it's going to affect those people in their homes, living in such... We don't know. But there was a political...
Agenda.
Exactly. This was an issue that was discussed in Parliament. Instead of people having a moral aspect in them and say, okay, we know we are the majority, but this thing has got an impact on our people's health. Let's not use it. But who knows how much money was paid for the MPs to vote, to accept? Who knows? Nobody. But you see, we lack that moral aspect in ourselves. We don't care about other people's lives as long as we are happy. Well, personally, I do agree. I've always agreed to the fact that, I have said this in many conferences, I've agreed to the fact that people are way better off without the antiviral medication than with.
You've concluded that?
Yes, I have mentioned it many times to them. You're giving this medication to the guys down there. They can't even feed themselves effectively. They don't have that nutritious kind of value in the foods they eat every day. You're only giving them medication so that they die the next week. That is the fact.
And did you also conclude that they died because of hunger, or they died of hunger?
Because of the effects of the how do they call them? The antiretroviral medication they give them. That is what breaks their system very, very fast. It's what weakens AIDS patients here. It's what destroys their different body parts, with the lungs, with the kidneys. The medication is way strong for someone who is not feeling well. There's no point. That person will live way longer without the medication than with the medication.
How can you be sure that was the effects of the drugs and not the supposed virus that they're presumed to be infected with?
I will give you an example. When I was diagnosed...
And are you making your observations from what's happened in Uganda, Russia, or Norway?
No, I want to give an example of myself in relation to a different disease. I never had any... I wasn't sick. I wasn't ill. I didn't cough. I didn't do anything. They only found something suspicious in my lungs, which they debated upon, and one doctor concluded that it was tuberculosis. Another said, no, it can't be tuberculosis. You know, they had that kind of debate, and they went through it. And they said, well, let's try TB medication. Guess what happens? I was down. I almost passed away. I became very ill. From this point all the way down within a week. 20 pounds in a week. What is that? I moved from 70 to 49. 70 to 49 in a week. This is the same situation I presume would happen to HIV patients. And for example, you find a patient very strong. He's eating the food he eats every day. Doesn't matter how bad or nutritious it is, but he has been feeding on that kind of food for many years until today. He's healthy. He can run. He sleeps wherever he sleeps. But he has been living in that condition for so many years.
Yeah.
And now you're putting something into his body, something that has never been there, something you're not certain how it's going to react.
Yeah.
We don't know.
You're talking about antiretrovirals.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is where I believe, and as I've always said, it's way better for some people not to use these medications. Some experiments have been conducted in Entebbe. We have a group of some women who don't die of HIV/AIDS or something like that, and another group is in Kenya, where they don't.
That was some time ago, wasn't it?
Yes, but the group in Entebbe has got some experiment that is being run on them.
You mean now?
Huh?
To date?
Yes, until today. Also, some discordant couples.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've read a lot about them. They are there. They're being involved in the experiment, but I don't know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. Maybe they're trying to figure out why they're not able to transmit the disease, or why they don't die of the disease themselves. That kind of thing.
While these experiments continue
Yeah.
at the expense of the taxpayer,
Yeah.
to the cost of millions of dollars,
Exactly.
and they're not concluding anything.
Exactly. And this has been going on for years. Remember?
Do you think it's rational to make a similar claim that because there's so much concordance among TB patients or malaria patients or diabetes patients or whatever, that therefore those conditions can be presumed to be sexually transmitted as well?
We wouldn't really take it that way. We wouldn't assume that. No. Probably they're afraid of the result. It might not, because if you run an experiment in an open, everybody's going to be curious to see the outcome.
Yeah.
Now imagine if the outcome doesn't come out in the same direction as people expected or as people have been told. That changes everything, and it'll be quite different. I guess probably they're trying to avoid that. At the end of the day, having a different thing, way different from what was expected.
Yeah.
That would be quite disaster. Really, it would be disaster.